When Trent Reznor formed Nine Inch Nails, the path to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame seemed dubious at best. The episode you're about to hear was the 4th episode we ever recorded way back in March, which we planned on releasing the week of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction in May. For obvious reasons, that was postponed. But just a couple weeks ago, Trent and Atticus Ross won an Emmy for their work on Watchmen, so now seems as good of a time as any to release this episode. Having won an Emmy, an Oscar, and a Grammy, now all that is left is a Tony Award to achieve the elusive EGOT status. And now, Less Than 2000 presents 9 Inch Nails. Less Than 2000.
The podcast.
This is a deeply emotional and important band to us, and hugely important in our development. This isn't Adam Sandler, this isn't MC Hammer, this is the real stuff. And of course we're talking about 9 Inch Nails, who is going into the Hall of Fame. I mean, could you ever believe that Trent Reznor would be in the Hall of Fame one day?
If you would have told me when you introduced me to 9 Inch Nails when I was 13, if you would have told me that we'd be sitting here right before he gets inducted into the Hall of Fame, I'd say you're crazy.
They were so popular culture. Nothing was like that at the time. It completely cut against the grain. I mean, yeah, there was Nirvana and stuff, but in terms of just how raw and different it was from everything else that was out at the time. And really, when you think about it, they weren't the first industrial group. And really, when we say we, there is no we. For all those years, it was Trent Reznor. It said on the CDs, Trent Reznor is 9 Inch Nails. And that's the way it was until Atticus Ross came along. It's now Reznor and Ross are 9 Inch Nails. They are definitely in my holy trilogy. 9 Inch Nails is in my holy trilogy of 90s bands. I mean, Rage Against the Machine, Tool, 9 Inch Nails. There it is. And they all represent anger and angst in the case of Rage Against the Machine, and enlightenment and anger in the case of Tool, and anger and sadness in the case of 9 Inch Nails.
So as a sidebar, do we need to talk about this anger?
I think this episode is the episode where everybody finally realized, wow, Adam has feelings.
All right. Well, you introduced me to 9 Inch Nails. You know, I mean, there was no one in our school that listened to them, and you introduced me to it. So
I'm responsible for your angst and sadness, is what I'm hearing.
And I would sit in my room with my headphones on, and you introduced me to Fixed. That's the darkest 9 Inch Nails album that was ever created. I mean, it sounded like people were getting tortured. I'm going to say it again. Torture. I was sitting in my bedroom listening to
sexual torture. It sounded like sadomasochism, and that song was "Happiness as a Slave" was the name of the song on Fixed. And I heard about 9 Inch Nails by watching Beavis and Butthead. That's how I know about it. The Wish video was on Beavis and Butthead. And Trent is in all black, of course, and in a cage, and it's like a strobe light effect, and it's just those hard-ass guitars. And holy crap, I'm like, what is this? And of course they show it because it's Beavis and Butthead watching music videos back in the day.
It was such a great show.
And so I went to Best Buy with my dad, and the only album I found in the 9 Inch Nails section was Fixed. And I didn't know any different. It had Wish on it, though.
Did your dad ever flip the CD over and go, son, this is all good?
I believe the line, it was either for that or Digital Underground Sex Packets. Promise me this isn't too weird. Ladies and gentlemen, the word fist is on the back of Fixed. It's like track number 5, fist.
I mean, as we were 12. Okay, we were 12 years old. There were 5 songs, right? Or 6?
6, I think.
6. Fist. Sure, son.
Sure, son. Go ahead. 12 years old.
This isn't too weird, right? I think that I remember you telling me the story. I think it was Digital Underground Sex Packets. It was the blue, black and white with the little blue sex packet.
Yeah, and it says sex packet.
And he looks at it and goes, now, this isn't too weird, son.
And now keep in mind,
no, Dad.
That one would have been when I was like 10. Okay, so
11.
So it's either...
No, were you 10?
Well, it came out in 89. I think I heard about it in 90.
So, yeah, we would have heard about it in 90, depending on when.
So that would have made it 9. Arguably 9 years old. But the point is, so either my dad was negligent, or he was intentional, or He's the greatest dad in the world.
Let's put him in the cool dad category.
He got in, of course, it had the parental advisory explicit lyrics on it, but it had Wish on it. And that's all I knew about Nine Inch Nails was Wish from the Beavis and Butthead video. And I found it. And I put it in, and I probably went straight to that track. I think it was the second one. And it was like 8 minutes long suddenly. I'm like, what is this? Like, and it started with this crazy drum solo and all this nuts. And it turned out to be different than the like 2.5 minute video, 3 minutes long song that you saw on MTV that came from Broken, which was actually the album that version of Wish came from.
Which to me, and that was the thing about Fixed, is every song was remixed and longer, and it had these crazy sound mixes, and it was an incredible album.
Well, and that's just the thing. We didn't know it at the time, but it turns out Trent would remix his own stuff and have other artists remix his songs from his LPs, his long play CDs and cassettes. So other people remixed it, and that was a remix album. However, he does this whole Halo thing. Everything was released under a Halo, and I believe the original Halo was not actually Pretty Hate Machine. Number 1 was Down in It, his first single. Mm-hmm. And I think Pretty Hate Machine, which is the first full album, was Halo 2, if I'm not mistaken. And now he's up at Halo 32. The last one was Halo 32. Now that includes all the mainline CDs and all the remixes and stuff.
So after you introduced me to Fixed, I introduced you to Broken, essentially, then.
Yeah.
And at the time, at 12 or whatever it was, I had no idea that Fixed was actually a remix off of Broken.
We had no idea. There's no internet. There was nothing.
Yeah, you just introduced me to Fixed. I'm like, oh, sweet. It's a red cover. I mean, that's all I knew.
It's the same thing with the
cover. Yeah.
And Fix is in blue and it's flames.
Yeah. But it was awesome. That was the one where he had all the skip tracks to where he had to get to like 98 and 99.
Yeah, that was the thing in the 90s. They had hidden tracks. And lots of bands did it, but suddenly the CD went up to 99. You're like, what the hell is that?
All of a sudden, you're listening to track 26, nothing. 27, nothing.
It had 6 main songs on it to begin with.
Yep.
2 of those were just filler, like Pinion, and I mean they're good. It's good filler. It's set the mood, but there are 4 songs on it essentially, and then all these skip tracks, and you got to Too Physical, an Adamant cover, and Suck. Which was a great song.
I'm sorry, I liked both those songs.
Broken was awesome. I mean, it was like the rockiest one of all of his career. It was like just hard ass guitars and.
Well, yeah, but see that's what I knew. See, I knew Nine Inch Nails as this dark, heavy band. So imagine my surprise when I go back and I get Pretty Hate Machine. That's totally different. It's like 80s, sort of light. Yeah, there's a love song on like track 5.
Something I can never have.
Not really a love song, but
Well, it's a ballad, if you will, and it's raw and emotional. And what's funny about that is Downward Spiral came out in 94. That's the big one for me. It wasn't until 94 that we learned about Pretty Hate Machine. I remember hearing that over here for the first time with the babysitter's boyfriend played it for us. And I was like, holy shit, there's more Nine Inch Nails out there? I didn't know that. And so suddenly imagine finding their first one, which did sound a lot different. 80s new wave synth pop kind of stuff, but Head Like a Hole. I mean, I'm telling you, he would not be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame without Head Like a Hole.
Oh, no.
And for me, Terrible Lie, the second track on that one, as well as many of his other songs that go into his angst about God and whatnot. But Terrible Lie was really meaningful to me. It was a dark, weird time of life, and where you start, around 13, like questioning whether there's a God and things like that, and maybe expressing some anger towards such an entity.
Again, do we need to talk about sidebar? Do we need to talk about this?
No, this is all stuff I've worked out over the years.
Oh, great. Okay.
This is insight. This episode's going to be different than the others because this show isn't just about looking back at stuff and making fun of it. This may be an episode you skip. This isn't all about comedy. This is about visceral, raw pain and emotion. And it's not just looking back at making fun of stuff. It's looking back and seeing how we've changed, how society's changed, and how that colors our perception between then and now.
Yeah, this listening to Broken and Fixed and listening to those albums when you're 12, 13 years old, it allows you to work some shit out. You are going through some shit. But the other thing I thought of was when we were in college age, I remember I was dating this girl. She came down and I was in a mood and I'm literally laying on the couch and I'm just blasting Something I Can Never Have. And I thought this would make her be like, oh, like, let's make out. Instead, she looks at me and she goes, well, that's dramatic, and left.
Dude, because that is very dramatic. Now, so were you trying to get laid, or were you expressing some genuine emotion?
Oh, there was genuine emotion. I was 22 and up.
There are lighter ones on that. Maybe I'm all messed up. Maybe I'm all messed up in you. The only time, sorry it took me so long to get there. This is the only time I'm drunk. I'm so in love with you. That is a legendary Nine Inch Nails song that he still plays. And thank God for Pretty Hate Machine. And it was really cool to like discover that because we knew them as a thrashing metal band. And then suddenly you're like, what's all this?
He has range?
But okay, the biggest thing for me is Downward Spiral.
Hands down.
1994, April 94 it was released, and that album changed my life. It's in the top 5 of my albums, a favorite of my life. Up there, Dark Side of the Moon and stuff like that. The other ones being maybe Anima by Tool, Rage Against the Machine self-titled, and The Chronic by Dr. Dre. There's my top 5.
That's a great list.
And the Downward Spiral,
a great list.
There's not... It holds up then and now. It is not dated. It is still...
Well, it's a little dated.
It's dated.
I mean, you and I, like a few years ago, sat down and we said, let's just listen to the whole album straight through, man. And it'd been a while. You
right.
piece songs here and there. By the end of it, we didn't say a word for like an hour, I don't think. We literally listened, stood in my kitchen, and at the very end of it, we were like, this is absolutely an amazing album. Wow, it still had a lot of 80s hidden in it. Like there was still, if you really break it down, there was still a lot of that influence in it. Again, I'm not bashing it. It's one of my favorite albums ever, just like yours. But let's be honest, it is a little dated.
Well, if you're talking about, I think you were just talking about Pretty Hate Machine.
Oh, no.
You're talking about Downward Spiral.
That was the Downward Spiral.
And you think Downward Spiral is really 80s. See, I think it's dated in the sense that music like that doesn't exist anymore. As I mentioned, other industrial bands did exist at the time. Skinny Puppy, Ministry were kind of the forerunners to everything. Trent Reznor and Nine Inch Nails popularized it. And then after that, you got bands kind of like Orgy and Stabbing Westward and stuff like that. But industrial music never really took off. And, and now nobody's doing it.
No one's.
So,
there's some, but it's not. It's further away from mainstream than it was in the 90s.
There's Rammstein and stuff, but it was one of a kind. And he's the godfather of a style of music that doesn't exist anymore. And so it's dated from the standpoint of it's so computerized. He wrote that in the Sharon Tate house where the Manson murders happened.
Yeah.
There's just samples of screaming children and women throughout the whole thing. Really weird sound. And the best way I can describe it is it sounds like a broken machine. Then Closer comes along. And again, not hard. I didn't really fully appreciate it. There was that great lyric in it, but it took a while for it to sink in. And then the music video comes out. And then suddenly everybody's heard of Nine Inch Nails.
To this day, that is one of the saddest experiences of my 7th grade year. You and I were the only ones that knew who Nine Inch Nails were. We'd tell them, 9 Inch Nails, what's that? Like, right. What? 9 Inch Nails? No one knew who 9 Inch Nails is. Then Trent says, F you like an animal, and the whole school knew by the next day. Everybody knew who 9 Inch Nails was, and he went mainstream almost overnight. I'm not complaining, other than the fact that ruined I knew them first.
Exactly.
We knew them first. Now everybody's like, yo, have you heard of 9 Inch Nails, bro?
Have you heard that F you like an animal song?
Yeah, that's how they would say it.
It's funny,
You mean track 5, Closer? Yeah, I've heard it.
And I don't care. See, we can't blame Trent for that.
No, I'm happy for him, because if he wouldn't have gone mainstream, we wouldn't still be going and seeing him tour this year. I mean, it's...
And to be fair to him, the context is it was 94. That is a lot different than 2020. To say F you like an animal and expect top 40 airplay. I guarantee you he wasn't expecting that.
No.
I'm sure when he wrote it, this is just track 5 on Downward Spiral. And then suddenly the label, and that really kind of pushed things forward, because really before that, there was like, I Like Big Butts by Sir Mix-a-Lot. Baby Got Back was like risque. Some of Madonna's songs were like risque.
How the
an animal, edited or not.
How did Baby Got Back end up being like the wedding song? Like the song played at all weddings.
I don't know.
What?
But I remember when that came on for the first time in the family car, and that look as my mom looked at my dad disapprovingly and shook her head, and then they changed the station.
Okay, see, the first time I heard it, I was laying in bed writing, and all of a sudden, like, Sir Mix-a-Lot came on. I like big butts, and you're like, what? I literally looked at my alarm clock which had the music coming out. I was like, what is this? Then you saw the music video and you're like, oh my God, he's dancing on a yellow molded plastic butt. And it's on mainstream television. Anyway, this is about Nine Inch Nails.
And speaking of videos, though, the closer video, again, you can't blame Trent for getting popular over the song. He probably never thought it was a single. And then the video has naked people in it, like simulated monkey torture, hearts being, like steampunk heartbeats, and naked Asians and old men in suits and spinning around, and it's such a cool aesthetic. And it was mind blowing. And that was also the summer of Woodstock 94, and that was he stole the show at Woodstock 94. He's covered in mud, none of his equipment was working, he was really pissed, he's throwing stuff around. The set list was incredible, and that was like the summer of Nine Inch Nails, that summer, 7th and 8th grade.
What's incredible to me is how much this album affected people of all different cultures, all different lifestyles. I mean, that video is weird. Everybody ate it up. It spoke to so many different people.
I'm with you, and that's a good point. This song, first of all, he uses a disco beat. There's no getting around it. It starts with kind of a techno disco beat. It is catchy and poppy, but there's no like real instruments. It's all synthetic and all computerized. And in a good way. It spoke to people all over the world. And the video, it's got sadomasochism and all this stuff, but I couldn't agree more. Unlike Adam Sandler, this stuff stands the test of time. This stuff came out around the same time as They're All Gonna Laugh at You. This stuff still has meaning. But even more than that, even as I've gotten older and gone through periods of my life where I don't feel the teenage angst anymore, you can listen to this and totally appreciate the musicianship.
Absolutely. Well, and you know why? Because he wasn't singing or making jokes about pubescent and high school stuff. He was making songs from his pain, from his world, from the Tate House. He was taking all that negative energy and all of the stuff that the world beats out of you and smashes in your face, and he was putting it out in a genius set of albums that made you feel something, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what pain you've had in life, because we all have pain. It doesn't matter. You can associate what he was going through or what you were going through, and there's a commonality in that. And that's why it stands the test of time. Not the little rhythmic beat that he would drop in the beginning or this or that. No, it stands the test of time because of what he was saying and what it meant and what you feel when you watch it. Listen to it. When you listen to it.
Yeah, if you just wouldn't have said watch it. That was beautiful.
Oh, now we got
man.
to cut this whole part out. No one's going to hear all of that great stuff because I stumbled on it. Watched it. No, Chad, you fucking idiot. Listen to it. You listen to a CD.
So I think we've both been a little harder on ourselves, having been living in a world of Nine Inch Nails recently, getting ready for this. And obviously I love this and I've never really stopped listening to it. There have been periods where like, I'm happy. I don't want to go back to that dark place. Because a lot of this does remind me of really, 8th grade, pimples and braces and girls and being all weird, going off to high school. But it lasts. It stands the test of time because you're right. This was made for the same audience, arguably, or was consumed by the exact same audience that thought The World's Longest Pee was the most hilarious thing in the world. But this stands the test of time. What do you think about the idea that Trent is some people have thrown out that it's just all marketing and it's all an image and it's just a product to consume, and it's all this music that we really related to growing up is all just a bunch of bull.
No, I don't know. Blasphemy! What the No! First off, no way, because you can't, Pretty Hate Machine, Broken, Fixed, Downward Spiral. You get into that whole world. He was up on drugs. He was living in the Tate house during Downward Spiral.
Addicted to heroin.
What? Who the said this?
Music writers like, Entertainment Weekly or something.
Who are they? Who's this?
Rolling Stone magazine. Just stuff I've heard.
No, I disagree. Now, is it hard to come up with authentic music after you've gotten past stuff? Like, after you get past the pain of the things that you were dealing with, the things that you were singing with. Yeah, I mean, he has to go out on stage and try to relive it. He's not even really reliving it. He's just performing at that point.
He's evolved at that. His music now is not about killing himself and drug addiction.
That's what I'm saying. So you can't say, the early stuff for sure had to be authentic. I mean, yes, he may be a little bit of amped. Artists tend to over dramatize and get dramatic about their world a little bit. But I'm sorry, that's some real stuff.
And that's why we relate to it. And because it is real in a way that a lot of other stuff isn't. I was a depressed 13, 14-year-old consuming this, and as everybody.
Who wasn't?
But, of course, listening to this and Hurt. Downward Spiral and Hurt. I mean, Downward Spiral is about suicide, and there's no getting around it. Hurt has drug addiction and suicide. And he was obviously going through some. And I've often wondered who influences what. Are we influenced by the music? Is Trent making people kill themselves? Because that was another thing that was being said. Kids were killing themselves and they were Nine Inch Nails fans. That was a huge thing in 94 and 95.
Oh, no, absolutely. I mean, it's interesting. So I'll tell you a story about my dad. We were in the middle of moving him. He did that stint where he had to move. We were in a vehicle and a song came on and I turned it up and I was like, oh my God, Dad, I loved this song. I used to listen to this song all the time when I was depressed. And he listens for about 30 seconds and he goes, are you sure you weren't depressed because you were listening to this song?
Exactly.
So, I mean, you're right. Are we being influenced by the music, or is the music a direct line of how we think and feel?
Again, looking back on how times have changed and how we've changed as human beings, at the time, it was a controversy. Is gangster rap influencing people? Is all this dark, edgy music influencing people to kill themselves and all this stuff? And it was controversial, and they were having like congressional hearings on it and stuff. It was all the rage. My mom was concerned about it. Yeah. And parents were supposed to talk to their kids about this stuff.
My mom would get the Catholic voice, and it was always like entertainment and your children, and it would be like CDs. Someone like, don't let your kids watch this.
And the ultimate of that was Marilyn Manson.
Oh, of course.
It was heavily influenced.
Now, that was the big one.
So, but Trent fell into this category and was really before all of it. So I remember at the time, back to how times have changed. At the time, I was like, no, Mom, it doesn't influence me. I'm not affected by it at all. But there's no doubt, looking back on it, that I was affected by it. Hurt is an amazing song. He plays it live every single show. It's the last song he plays before the encore. I've seen Nails more than any other band. I've seen him live more than any other band, and at least a dozen times. In every single show, it seems like he taps into that, and the room just gets so quiet, and everybody feels that. I remember the first time I saw him, I mean, this girl behind me was crying, and like I held her hand, and it was amazing. That was actually the first time I saw him was in 2000, and it was with A Perfect Circle and Nine Inch Nails, and what a hell of a lineup that was. They came to Nebraska before in 94, 95, and on the tour with Jim Rose Circus. We were too young. Our parents wouldn't let us go, but they came through, and the Hurt video was actually shot in Omaha.
That's right.
It was that in Houston, I think, those two shows. So he always loved playing Omaha. And I guess it reminded him of Cleveland, where he grew up, just this kind of Midwestern burg. And so it was great. But, he had The Fragile come out later. We're not going to go into that track by track. But Nine Inch Nails was so big, especially in kind of the mid-'90s, teenage years. Remember, the summer of '94, The Crow was an amazing movie and an amazing soundtrack with Rage Against the Machine and Stone Temple Pilots and The Cure, and Nine Inch Nails had one of their best songs, Dead Souls, which was a cover of a Joy Division song.
Oh, that was such a great soundtrack.
They were on the Seven movie, used a remix of Closer.
See, this is where I'm glad. I mean, like I said, we're not going to get into stuff like With Teeth and some of these other, albums that came out. They don't, to me, they're not as rock solid as the early stuff, but that's also in part because that's what we were influenced by, because we were young and it was really speaking to us at that time. That being said, I am so glad Trent got into soundtracks.
Oh yeah,
because from day one, his music, you could score an entire movie with his soundtrack, with his sound, with his voice, with his tones, and now he's doing that and winning massive awards doing it. And there's just such a special part in my heart when I see film that he's put a little piece of himself on with his music, because it changes what that movie is. And I think this movie would not be the same if it were not for Trent Reznor.
Prime example of that being Natural Born Killers with Something I Can Never Have. Mm-hmm. And that great scene in the desert where they're fighting. And Trent actually was the music producer for the original soundtrack for that one. So he put a couple nail songs into it,
of course,
including Burn, which was a great original.
Oh, yeah.
And then, of course, Lost Highway came along a year or two later, and that was kind of in between. He didn't put out a new album until '99, so we got a bunch of soundtracks. We got Lost Highway, A Perfect Drug, that was fantastic. And then he produced Antichrist Superstar with Marilyn Manson, and that was really only Marilyn Manson's only album to me. Like that was a great one.
That was it.
It had Trent all over it.
Yeah.
The later stuff, I think Closer was the dividing point. I think he was influenced by the success of Closer, because even The Fragile, which I really like, 1999's The Fragile, the double album, really, really like it. A lot of it is very poppy.
If everything still sounded like 80s, early 90s, that'd be a problem.
Well, and he had plenty of great instrumental tracks and plenty of great dark stuff too. I mean, I'm not in any way diminishing it. It just seemed a lot more. Whereas Downward Spiral is a suicide note written on a computer, this one was great though. I mean, we had these leitmotifs where they just keep recurring throughout both of them. I always went with right. I know it's left is the official beginning of that, but for some reason, I started with right, and that's the way I think of it. It was so special seeing Nine Inch Nails with you at Red Rocks, and I can't believe as many times as I've seen them that we never saw them together until a year ago, 2 years ago.
2 year or two ago.
And they played Dead Souls, and he went into Hurt. And the best venue in the world. Not at all the kind of act that you normally see at Red Rocks. Not at all a jam band or anything like that. But it was so awesome to see that with you. The legend has it, allegedly, he had a drug overdose after 99. He came close to death. He turned it around. With Teeth was his first one in 5 years. And, Year Zero was great. I really liked The Slip. I liked Hesitation's Marks. The newer stuff I'm getting used to. Thank God he pulled through it. And think about how many people, not that he killed with his bad influence, that he kept alive. That he could speak for. Maybe it's all being cheesy, but
no, not at all. This is literally one of those moments that if there wasn't two microphones in front of us and this wasn't awkward as this is the bro hug moment. Well, we'd be like hugging right now if it wasn't for the fact that we're actually doing a podcast.